Woo! Yes, you are hearing me. I know this is a little bit different for a little Wednesday Sovereign Tech Q&A, but baby, you're hearing me in the studio. Oh yeah. So like I said, there's going to be a lot of content that comes out this week, even over the next couple of days. I do want to let you know that a lot of people were wondering, what exactly happened to Sex and Science Hour last week? And of course, the week that we are in right now is pretty much just shy of the end of February of 12,017 HE, that being the Holocene era. And don't worry, there will be a full Sex and Science Hour coming out this Friday. I can guarantee you that because it's already recorded. So that'll be out. But really, I think just the episode with that I wasn't on, the episode with MK and Stephanie was just so good, so hot. We had to let it go a couple weeks. I mean, that's how it worked out. So anyway, don't worry, that'll be out this Friday, a new episode. So we've got a lot to get into with this Q&A episode. It is great to be doing one from the studio. Usually I'm doing it from either on location or from the dungeon, as it were. But no, we got the full setup right now, so loving it. Okay. So earlier this week, and today's date, of course, is February 22nd. Again, that's 12,017 HE. Earlier this week, I released an episode that was, it's just a bonus episode. It's like 30 minutes of just me talking about something called What is Observationism? Now, it was kind of planned to be this way, but it ended up being very much a conversation around anarchism in general. Don't worry, we're going to get into some interesting science and, kind of quasi-tech stuff here in a second. And got a ton of questions about it. Just a fucking ton. And a couple of them, I just want to let people know that I heard them and that there will be, these things will be addressed in the very near future. One of them was, again, this is in reference to that episode. If you didn't listen to it, you don't have to listen to it. There's no tech in it whatsoever. It's really me just kind of yapping for like 30 minutes about a ridiculous idea that I had. And anyway, that's that's a whole other story. But here we go. So this is actually a two-parter that I'm going to kind of shift these around. I've got like 2-3 questions here where the questions are kind of related. So I'm not reading from the same questioner at each point, just so you understand that. But anyway, this is the first part of it. Would you be willing to expand on your criticisms of Jordan Peterson in a Patreon episode? Yes. Just to answer that question, I absolutely will be addressing my criticisms of Jordan Peterson because they are legion. And as I said in that What is Observationism episode, I'm getting a little concerned that he's kind of becoming one of those libertarian Jesuses, or should that be Jesus? Of course, the Bible warns against there being multiple Jesus, multiple Christs. Maybe that's the best way to say that, to do a plural Jesus. Anyway, yes, in fact, I'm half tempted just because this guy, and please, if you like his work, you like his work. I'm not insulting you for liking his work. He's become so popular. I am half tempted to release or like to make it a primary aspect of a full-on Sovereign Tech Prime episode. And I've even had people request that I do the show with my dear friend Brett Venat. I probably won't. That probably won't go down. And not to say that he and I hadn't talked about it, but that's not. If you're looking for that, probably not going to happen. But I will certainly say my piece and respond to what Jordan Peterson has to say. And I'm going to, actually, I'll tell you what. If the patrons want, again, it might just be a Patreon episode. It might be a full episode. It depends how I feel about it. If you have particular clips, say, that resonate with you, and some great patrons, Sovereign Tech patrons, have already shared clips with me, and I've checked them out, and I appreciate them. Send them my way, and I will, if there's something in particular you'd like me to respond to, perhaps I will do that. Otherwise, I will stick to more of the talks that I took a particular issue with. as far as he goes. So anyway, yes, just to answer that question, absolutely, that will be coming down the pike. Again, it may be a main episode, might end up being a Patreon only episode. We'll see. Or maybe I'll make it a Patreon only episode. And then, as I've done, and as the patrons yourselves have requested, if it's something particularly juicy or interesting or worthwhile, I will put it out, say, as a YouTube video or something for the rest of the world to be able to enjoy. We'll see how that shapes up. So anyway, I just want to lay out a thank you. First off, thank you to the patrons, for being patrons on Patreon in the first place. You're really making this all work and happen. And I also want to say, like, I'm impressed. You guys have full access to the stuff. You could download it. You could put it up on your own YouTube thing, your own YouTube channels if you wanted. And I wouldn't necessarily care if you did. Some of the information I kind of like to keep behind a paywall, not because it's a paywall, but just because, I don't know, like I get a little deeper with you guys, and it's okay. I don't mind if it gets out there and if it's a big deal or whatever, but to date, I haven't seen anybody do that. So I appreciate you, just respecting the way that I'm disseminating the information. I'm just saying you honor me with that. I don't care if you did, if you wanted to, be, Robin Hood and, post all these shows out for free for people to enjoy. I mean, shit, it's just going to be free marketing for me. But anyway, I kind of enjoy the little tighter knit community that comes along with Patreon. So thank you all for being patrons, and thank you again for respecting the way that I put this information out there. Not that I am not one for copyright. I am not one for IP. Holy shit. Speaking of that, all right, quick sidetrack. Speaking of that, and I'm done talking about Jordan Peterson right now. Quick sidetrack. The episode of the Tatiana Show, it just came out the same day as this is getting done, February 22nd. She had Jeffrey Tucker on, who I just love for a million reasons. John Light, who is also actually, kind of a friend. He and I have hung out quite a few times. And Justin Colsonetti. Anyway, he's a New York boy, a smart guy. I don't agree with him. And in fact, the IP episode, I don't really agree with him at all, but a very smart guy. And also Josh Shigala, who is Tatiana's co-host. This episode is the IP episode, and it's the latest episode of the Tatiana Show, was fucking dynamite. It went like an hour and a half. Usually those shows only go an hour. I was so impressed by the conversations and the points brought up. Anyway, you can check that out for yourself. I was certainly like, who was I the most in line with as far as who was talking about it? I'll be honest with you. I got invited to be on it, but I said, look, no, it'll be too many cooks in the kitchen. Not that I'm afraid. I've had conversations with Justin, who was the pro IP guy, the pro intellectual property guy on there. I've had personal conversations with him, and they've gotten very heated too. It's not like, I feel like I can, well, it all comes down to enforcement. But anyway, I'm certainly, I have no issue talking to Jeffrey Tucker. Obviously, John Light, he and I have, had our debates, and we've, talked stuff over many a time. So it wasn't an issue like, I didn't want to be in the room with these names. It was just, I give everybody else more time. And since the show went an hour and a half, obviously everybody needed all the time that they had. So I was happy not to necessarily be, I was okay with not being a part of it. But that was a dynamite episode. You really want to go check that out. Just look up the Tatiana Show, and it's the latest episode. It was fantastic. I think it's called the IP debate or something like that, or the IP special. Just fantastic. Anyway, so little follow-up, and actually I'm going to be doing a double follow-up on this, as in I'll be doing another follow-up in the future. But just a funny note from somebody, a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, we talked about generating passwords. What are best practices for that? And I got a message, or, I got a comment from a Sovereign Tech patron. It said, thanks for suggesting GRC. Of course, GRC is Gibson Research Center. That's grc.com. For getting passwords. They have a password generator. We talked about it in that Q&A. Reading on, wanted to share a funny story, though. Had a website send an email suggesting I increase the security of my password. Went to GRC for a suggestion and entered it. The website said, quote, sorry, password is too long. Must be less than 30 characters, end quote. Who knew a password could be too secure? Quote unquote. I thought that was funny. So that's something we talked about in that password generation episode was that, well, I mean, first off is that the passwords you get from GRC are like generally 64 characters. I mean, there's a bunch of different options there. And you can just use 30 of them. You don't need to use, like all 64 necessarily. And you could use the last 30 if you want to, if you want to be a little more careful about it. But anyway, I think the funny this is what I said in it is that at the end of the day, you could create the greatest password of all time. But if the service or website or app or software, whatever, limits what you can do with a password, you're fucked. Like, it doesn't matter how great your password is. If you can't use it, it's not, it just doesn't matter. And this is so true. Like really the restrictions that a lot of services, sites and software and everything have on passwords is almost as dangerous as having a bad password. It's just a fact. I mean, 30 characters is pretty good. Like, I think I had said in the episode, you want to get at least over 21. But that's all right. So anyway, I just thought that was a funny comment. Yeah, there's a password that's too secure. I mean, that's kind of what it chalks up to, because really the site, their password implementation is not secure. So the password is too secure for the website. It's kind of accurate. Anyway, okay, let's see what's next on the list here. So okay. So we're going to get into here. This is going to be, a little tech, science, and philosophy all wrapped up into one. This, I guess, is going to be kind of our major question this week, though I certainly still have a couple others to get into. I'm going to try to get through like 5 questions here. So, okay, and I'm gonna like, this is where it gets into. This is from 2 different questioners, and here's the question. So, if you could travel back in time and prevent any one event from happening, what event would you prevent? And how do you see things playing out differently? Also, do you imagine some kind of time travel paradox where preventing a thing from happening means that you never went back to undo the thing, so it happens anyway? A la Futurama Decision 3012. Okay, so now that leads into kind of a second question that I don't know if I'm going to address the second question, or maybe it's technically the third question because the one has 2 in it. I don't know if I'm going to fully get into this, but I think they're kind of related. So here's the other part of a question from a completely separate episode, completely separate response. Can you imagine any scenario where it may be prudent to breach the prime directive in your personal life? Obviously, you can tell this is referencing the episode of, what was objectivism or observationism. Say lethal force or something like that. Okay. So to understand number 2, or the third question of the 3 here that are all one subject. So I am not inherently, wrong word. I am predisposed. I am disposed. No, I'm not disposed. I think the use of lethal force is unethical. That does not mean that the use of self-defense is unethical. I think self-defense is a fine and dandy thing. I am a Kravist. I mean, I am all about, learning, and I've been doing Krav for years. I mean, well, actually now it's over a decade. Okay. So I am all about self-defense. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not going to get into right here. This is the part I won't get into. If you've never heard me talk about the use of lethal force, maybe I'll get into that in a future episode, but don't write me off, because believe me, I know exactly what it's like to use lethal force. And I've done it. So, don't think I'm talking from some kind of pansy's position or something, which is just a ridiculous notion in the first place. So that was kind of the point in his question. And so, lethal force, I mean, this is when the initial question that was asked comes up, this is usually one of the first things people think of. And that, again, back to the question, if you could travel back in time and prevent any one event from happening, what event would you prevent? And I love how that rolls off the tongue. Most people instantly say they'd kill Hitler. Now, there was a great episode of the new Twilight Zone, and I don't mean the 85 Twilight Zone, which was fantastic, by the way. Harlan Ellison, J. Michael Straczynski writing for it, just dynamite stuff done with that 80s Twilight Zone. The new Twilight Zone was the one hosted by Forrest Whitaker that was on UPN that would air like right after Enterprise. I think it went two seasons, 2 or 3. It might have been 2001, 2002 when that came out. But Forrest Whitaker, who, is now kind of famous for playing Saw Gerrera in Rogue One. I mean, he's famous for a bunch of reasons. He's been an actor forever. He lended a lot of gravitas, I think, to the part. Nobody can really take the place of Rod Serling, of course, to introduce stories. But he did a pretty good job. Anyway, one of the very first episodes from the first season of the new Twilight Zone on UPN back in the aughts was one with Katherine Heigl. Woo. And she plays a time traveler that, goes back in time into Nazi Germany. And she makes it a point to kind of, get in the graces of Hitler's dad. And, her plan is to kill Adolf Hitler. And she does so by, ingratiating herself and becoming, kind of the nanny for the Hitlers. And the weird thing is, in the story, what you find out happens is that, Adolf Hitler's Daddy Hitler, okay, is stooping like the, someone else. Okay. He's having extramarital affairs and all this. I haven't seen this episode since it aired, so I can't, I may not get all the details 100% right, but the gist is the same. And one of the people, if I remember right, that he's stooping is really mentally unstable. And so Katherine Heigl, the baby's born, whatever. And Katherine Heigl, does the deed where I think she jumps into like a river or something and drowns with baby Hitler. The thing is that you find out what happens is that Daddy Hitler was stooping a couple women, his wife, and then, this crazy person. And in Katherine Heigl's character killing off baby Hitler, you find out that baby Hitler would have been fine because it wasn't, the offspring of some, quote unquote nut job. And I'm using these terms, colloquially. I'm not, or conventionally. I'm not saying that that's how I feel about it. So her going back in time to kill Adolf Hitler is what actually created Adolf Hitler, because it wasn't really the son of mommy Hitler. You get what I'm saying? So that's kind of a paradox where, maybe, I mean, that's kind of a flip on the question of, would it be a paradox? That's kind of a paradox where a person traveling back in time is what actually created Hitler. Not that, that's how it was always supposed to happen. And that leads me to kind of my thoughts on time. Now, not that, this question asker was necessarily asking for my thoughts on time, but it does answer the second part of the question. And then maybe I'll have fun and answer the first. So, because the second part of that question was, do you imagine some kind of time travel paradox where preventing a thing from happening means that you never went back to undo that thing, so it happens anyways? Kind of what we talked about there with that new Twilight Zone episode. So again, to be very clear, guess what? I would not go back in time and kill Hitler, even if I could. You're going to think that sounds nuts, okay? You can you go right ahead and think that. And I am not a Nazi of any kind. I'm ethnically Jewish. I mean, I'm almost renowned for that these days. So, no, just, I don't think that was the way, to really, to solve, that problem. And, well, okay, I'll break down a little bit into that just so you don't think that, what the fuck is he talking about? I mean, obviously, if you can go back in time, understand with what was happening in Weimar Germany, in the Weimar Republic of the time, Hitler, I don't want to say that he wasn't crazy or that he was just a product of his time, a byproduct of the times. But I mean, you'd have to off, so many people. You'd have to off Rommel. You'd have to, I mean, there's so many names that you'd have to off because frankly, at the time, in my opinion, if it wasn't Hitler, it would have been someone else. Okay. Just like right now, frankly, if it wasn't Trump in office, personally, it would have been someone else. There's a bit of a cultural thing going, or not a bit. There's a real cultural thing going on here. Okay. It would have been someone else. These groups that, helped propel Trump to power, they would have just supported somebody, somebody different. And a lot of the things, that Trump's doing right now, granted, he doesn't have to do them, but a lot of them are based upon policies from previous presidents. Okay, so I guess in some ways I'm even saying that, like, there's no real way, like, there's really no good way to even think about, like, how could you possibly stop something from happening in the first place? Because it's never really necessarily just one person. There's always so many, confluent inspirations, events that occur that lead to, much larger events. So anyway, to talk about my thoughts on time, and boy, I mean, could I spend a whole episode talking about this? And yeah, understand, like, oh boy, sorry, I'm going all over the place. Okay. Just to finish up, like, what would I do to stop Hitler? First off, okay, I'm just one person, and one person cannot possibly have all the answers in the world for how to handle things. I just know that offing one person also wouldn't solve that problem. Okay, there would just have to, I'd need so much information to know what to do to stop that. I mean, in some ways, in fact, there's a great book called Voluptuous Panic that I really recommend reading. And it talks about, what life was like in 1920s Berlin, in 1920s Germany. And in my opinion, it's not all bad. Now, there's some economic issues to be certain, but a lot of the cultural and the art and things like this were actually on a path that I could appreciate. And that I think is A-okay. And so somehow, well, so here's a guess. Okay. And this is just me, armchairing and being theoretical here. There's so much. So, I mean, what was, in the Weimar Republic in 1920s Germany, not unlike 1920s, America, which also very important point to bring up is that Nazi Germany, like, they were following a playbook in many ways that was created in America. Okay. With eugenics and all of these other things. I mean, that's just, there's some great works by Edwin Black that talk about that. I mean, and then of course, how did, IBM very much empowered Nazi Germany, and understand IBM is, I mean, that's an American company, and they want to, play it off like, oh, actually it's just this, Damog company. It was like a subsidiary that we didn't really have control over. So don't blame us. And it's a bunch of bullshit. So anyway, 1920s Germany was, for lack of a better phrase, very libertine, very, very, and I use this term conventionally, not as a philosophical school, very hedonistic. Okay. Like, I mean, it was, orgies and all kinds of other wild shit, just happening all over the place. At the time, just as it seems to be today, not unironically, the world, and certainly Germany, the bulk of the people in Germany were not ready for that kind of lifestyle. They just weren't. And so there was a pushback on that. Does that mean that hedonistic libertine lifestyle that people were living in 1920s Germany is a bad thing, or that it was the problem, or that it's what caused the downfall of the Weimar Republic and the rise of Hitler? Absolutely not really. The reaction to that is what caused it, not the actual, like, wild sex life and whatever the fuck else they were doing, all the parties and all the shit, which again, in the 1920s America, kind of similar, what was happening, just instead of Hitler, in America, it was corrected by a Great Depression, quote unquote corrected. So, but understand that, Hitler was not, I mean, was he a response to that kind of lifestyle? I don't think that's unfair to say. I mean, there's other events too. Like I said, there's such a confluence. Okay. There's so many factors involved. Sure. But understand that, if nobody responded, life would have went on. Okay. Yeah. Maybe there would have been some kind of economic failure, but that doesn't mean that the actions, that these people were engaging in, this hedonistic lifestyle was, somehow the actual problem. It's not. It's just not. Stop. Okay, get over it. If I'm going to if someone's going to message me and say, well, this is, it's proof that conservatism is what's necessary for a stable economy and all this shit, well, then let the fucking economy burn. No, I say that somewhat facetiously, but I'm just saying, like, really, that's not the case. Like, I don't understand why an economy has to crash just because, one guy wants to fuck another guy, or because one gal wants to stoop 4 other gals, and then maybe one guy gets involved in and all that. I mean, that doesn't even make fucking sense if you listen to yourself, when you say that. So anyway, boy, are we all over the map or what? So if you get my point, killing Hitler wouldn't solve anything. There you go. That's the bottom line that I want to bring up, is that it really wouldn't solve anything. And how do you solve Hitler from happening? Like I said, I don't pretend to have the answers or anything, but there just have to be somehow you'd have to make it culturally acceptable. For people to live this, again, conventionally hedonistic lifestyle. You'd have to make that somehow acceptable to people. And it just wasn't, I know, there's a lot of evidence that goes back and forth on this. And believe me, I've researched World War II up and down. Okay. Like that the Pope worked with Hitler. Well, what organization in 1920s Europe or early 20th century Europe, has a lot to lose from people suddenly living it up? The Catholic Church. I find it, I would not be surprised or shocked, not because necessarily the Catholic Church is some kind of grand evil, and I'm not saying they're not, but not to say that, but just because of the fact that, look, if people are living this shit up, they're going to leave us, and we're going to lose, Germany's, a moneymaker. We're going to lose this. This is going to be bad. So to say that somehow the Catholic Church would have supported, a hard right, pullback in Germany, in the 30s. I think they would, for their own survival. But again, we're not here to talk about that. So there'd have to just be a massive culture shift. Now I don't know how you make that happen. So I feel like I'm kind of dodging in saying that, look, I don't know what one event that I could possibly change. So I guess I'll say, if I could somehow actually control what event I could change, which one would that be? Well, frankly, and actually this kind of addresses, even Nazi Germany in a way. As far as what factors kept the Roman Empire from falling, I would do whatever it takes to make sure that, I don't want it to stay as an empire. And there's a lot of arguments that it would have eventually, evolved into something else. But whatever it took to keep like Roman society going, that's exactly what I would have, and if that means that I had to like fix all the aqueducts and replace them with something plastic instead of the lead pipes that they were using that was driving the entire civilization insane. That's the one thing, I guess, if I could keep it from happening. Again, what the Roman Empire, it wasn't built in a day, and guess what? It didn't fall in a day either. The Visigoths were were symptomatic that, they didn't actually wreck the whole damn thing. I would really do whatever. If I could change an event, I would keep the Roman Empire from falling. You got to understand, folks, like, a lot of people talk about, the amazing thing of the Enlightenment and the Renaissance and all this. The driving force of the Renaissance, okay, for one, was an incredible increase in wealth, particularly in Florence, Italy. But what came out of that, the gaining of so much wealth during like the Florentine Renaissance was what it really came out of was people saying, no, we can live the good life here. And they had to, because the Catholic Church was just so pervasive, culturally, they had to actually, unfortunately, they were in Italy, which, was the seat of the Roman Empire for so long. Fortunately, they were able to find it. They had to go back to their ancestors. They had to go back to the Roman Empire to just find people, to find humanists, to find people who even knew what it looked like to live it up. And great, there's a lot of events that precipitated that. Of course, in Florence, they started getting some visitations from people from, the Byzantine Empire, okay, which still understood a lot of Roman culture and all this shit, right? So, because of course the Byzantine Empire was just, kind of the Eastern version of the Roman Empire when Constantine, kind of split stuff up. So yeah, like even the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and all, a lot of that totally came out of a Roman influence. So my theory is that if you could just keep these, effective dark ages between the Florentine Renaissance and the fall of the Roman Empire, from happening, then, we could be living Star Trek right now. In my opinion. So that's, if I could change one event, that's what I do. I mean, and it's so, it's all theoretical, it's all speculation. And I mean, and this would even solve the Hitler problem, because understand this, that, if you were a Jew in the Roman Empire, or whatever religion you were, all different kinds of religions were very, very they were very tolerated, in the Roman Empire. Like socially, the Roman Empire in some ways is still ahead of anywhere else on the planet. Really, they really were. I'm not saying they didn't have problems. There's plenty to talk about, and I could. All right. But, a Hitler situation, I don't think would necessarily happen. I mean, and you could talk about, well, what about when they destroyed the Second Temple, in the first century? What do we do about that? Isn't that like Hitler rounding up the Jews and all this stuff? That's such an oversimplification of what exactly was going there. And I'm not blaming the victims being the Jews at the time, by any stretch of the imagination, but very different story. I mean, understand, if you were born, in in Rome or in a Roman province or something like that, and you were Jewish, you were considered a Roman citizen, much like if whatever you happen to be, whatever genetic history you have today, if you're born in America, you're an American. You were a Roman. Paul of Tarsus, okay? Paul, the Apostle Paul, right? He was a Jew. He was of the tribe of Benjamin, but he was a Roman, and he got treated like a Roman. He was given access to things because, no, he's a Roman citizen. Doesn't matter if he's Jewish. He was a Roman citizen. Not that I'm saying citizenship is something, wonderful to go for. I understand I'm an anarchist, okay? But I'm just saying that, a lot of these different events probably wouldn't have happened underneath the auspices of, say, the Roman Empire, or what would end up becoming more of the Roman Empire. Now, I could argue that, what is the event that I would have to stop? I mean, maybe you could point at the rise of Christianity. That was certainly, a huge issue that brought down the Roman Empire, because Christianity stood in contrast to, what's his name? Albert Edwards? Is it he wrote a fantastic book about this, or a huge volume, about the history of the Roman Empire. That's terrible. I can't think of the book's name. It's very famous. It's from the 19th century. But anyway, he wrote this, multi-volume tome, and one of the particular parts is talking about, and I think it's accurate, where, since Christianity was so concentrated so much on the afterlife and what comes after this world, that the humanism, no, this is the good life attitude, meaning on earth right now, attitude of the Romans, there was a serious conflict there. But that it was that attitude of the good life is here on earth is what allowed, Rome to prosper and evolve and, have so many social innovations, innovations, technological innovations, and so much more. And Christianity just came and wiped all that out, because they said us, stop. I mean, they were quoting their own books, right? Saying, don't collect what moth and rust destroy. I mean, that's right out of the Bible, or out of the New Testament anyway. So, that stands in stark contrast to the Roman Empire. So I would argue more so that really the rise of Christianity is what actually destroyed the Roman Empire. And, we've talked about Constantine the Great in the past and all this. And so, but I mean, how do you stop that, right? You can't, or I mean, I shouldn't say you can't, but you need such a strong, philosophical movement, logical philosophical movement, that maybe couldn't have come into being at the time. I mean, maybe, again, this is pointing to all these different factors that can occur. I hope I'm not boring anybody. Okay. Let me know if this is all boring to you, what I'm saying. But, understand that, one of the great Roman technological innovations, was literally bringing water from the mountains, they had their aqueduct systems and all that, that they brought water to wherever there was none. And that allowed for a lot of luxury, all kinds of things, allowed for, kind of one of the starts of modern sanitation. Not to say that other civilizations didn't have sanitation. Egypt certainly did. They just, it was more based on certain aspects of gravity, as in let it run down in one wall in the house. But okay. But understand, that these aqueducts they made were all made with lead piping. The lead was literally driving the Romans insane. Okay, it's an incredible innovation. It allowed for so much growth. It allowed for so much prosperity, but it was driving them nuts. And is that what led to them accepting Christianity? Is because literally their brains were having a hard time with logic, down the line? I mean, maybe. So, that's why I said, is that what it would take for me to save Rome? Would I have to, somehow replace all of their aqueducts and have stop them from getting lead poisoning and, and having it fuck with their head? Maybe that's what it takes. So anyway, that's pretty much my answer to that. And again, to solve the problem, we're talking about the fall of an empire that caused, how much pain and suffering. I mean, maybe someone was saved. It's all speculation and guesswork as far as that goes. But would killing Constantine the Great solve the problem? No. Like I said, I mean, we already discussed how many different symptoms there were, of what led to the fall, of Rome. So, so again, I don't think lethal force would have solved that problem. But anyway, so I think I answered the first one. That's what I would try to prevent, is the fall of the Roman Empire. How do you see things playing out differently? Like I said, I see, I mean, not that Rome didn't have its quirks, blowjobs were considered, obscene, very strange, just where, we talk about blowjobs far more freely than, our presidents get blowjobs and do odd things with cigars. But it's definitely way more acceptable. I mean, there's little odd things that I'm sure people would point to and say, oh, Stallion, what about this though? They're not as advanced as us. It's well, okay. But overall, net positive. Yeah. I think socially they were way ahead of the curve. I mean, yes, they still had slavery that would have gone away. In fact, you can see writings from so many different, I mean, just, look at, even, back during during the Revolutionary War in America, okay, the quote unquote founding fathers, I mean, who are they all quoting? They were quoting so many Roman authors talking about the nature of freedom and all this, okay, and they were doing that because they considered themselves slaves under King George. Now, granted, obviously they missed the boat on the fact that they were still harboring, or they were still holding black people as slaves and all this, even though, yes, they were offering, Buffalo Soldiers and whatever else is, their freedom as free men and all this. But my point being is that, in Rome, you could see the potential cultural shift to where human slavery, which definitely is a lot of what the Roman Empire was built upon, no doubt, okay, was going away. But part of the reason perhaps that cultural shift was happening is because technologically they were seeing that they could get away from it because of, I mean, look, understand, Rome was inventing the steam engine. They really were. We've covered this on Sovereign Tech for years. I mean, so many different things that we can think of today that were just wow, we just figured this out now. And then, we dredge up some old Roman bathhouse and suddenly we find, pieces of technology there, which I could get into the importance of the bathhouse. I mean, man, that's how you get to high civilization is in the hot tub. And I mean that seriously. But, we find the stuff and we're well, how the fuck did they figure that out? So I see, we would have avoided the Dark Ages, all this medieval horse shit, probably would have skipped, a lot of the problems with feudalism and, monarchies and all this. I mean, it really could have been something. And I don't see that the Roman Empire would have continued on forever. I think eventually, it either would have split up. In fact, you have other, it's funny in Rome, in the Roman Empire, there were talks at times, by emperors and by philosophers of their day of creating what is effectively a Free State Project, which if you don't know what the Free State Project is, go to freestateproject.org, and it'll tell you all about it. But they were, they had plans, to create these little, in fact, what was the name of it? Platonopolis or something? The idea was it was going to be this philosophical city where they would try out all of these different kind of, cultural experiments, on like, okay, what if, this city was based upon this type of perhaps market or this type of idea or something like this. So eventually, Rome was already positioning itself to try out different ways of living within its own empire. And I think eventually that if the Roman Empire was was able to continue on, eventually all of that would have turned into, what would end up being like city states of some kind. Hopefully there wouldn't have been civil wars. But it's just hard to imagine what it would end up being like. But I also would stand by my statement that I think we'd easily be living in the solar system right now if the Roman Empire never fell, or if the Roman Empire didn't fall when it did, if it was allowed to continue on and to more naturally, kind of separate and divide up. It could have been amazing in my opinion. And that's just a guess. So kind of the last part of that, do you imagine some kind of time travel paradox where preventing a thing from happening means that you never went back to undo the thing, so it happens anyways? Okay, so this gets into like multiverse theory, and is each kind of like, stream of time, is that like an entire parallel universe? Yeah, maybe. I get the idea of the multiverse, it's like, and this is always my analogy or description or what that would look, my metaphor of what it would look like. A multiverse, picture those marbles like that you had maybe when you were a kid that were clear and inside they had a bunch of air bubbles. That's the multiverse. Like all of those bubbles is another just like different little universe. But now understand that can be taken a couple ways. One is that it's a different universe in how this universe ended up working out, or it is a completely different universe, a completely different dimension that operates with completely different laws of physics, perhaps. And that gets into a whole other massive conversation, that we could talk about. And yet, no, does going back, and when you change it, does that keep you from changing it? And then you end up in like this weird loop where, okay, what the fuck actually happened in history? I don't see that as like a requirement. Time travel is such an odd damn thing, in the first place. And there's a lot of, theory onto whether can you actually, okay, sure. It's scientifically feasible to travel into the future, but is it actually possible to travel into the past? Most theories say no, you can't go to the past, though, going to the future, but you're not really traveling to the future. You're just moving at a different pace, than say, other people around you. That gets into weird things. And, understand this, that my concept of time, my opinion and not my own personal theories, but theories that I subscribe to on time, is that time is a mesh. And what I mean by that, I'm going to try and be very broad here. Okay. Is that, it's not just time. Time, when we use the word time, we're really just talking about a certain measurement from A to B, not unlike, centimeters, kilometers, and whatever else. Okay. But understand that time itself, it's space-time. Meaning that time and space, as in everything around you, is really one. And so when you say like, into the future and all of this, this is so tough to like try and break down very easily. It's not just time. Like time is not its own entity. Okay. Time is absolutely attached to the computer you're holding. Time is attached, to all of these different things. Like they're really one in the same. Okay. And the faster that you can kind of move along that space, this is where, you get into like special relativity. Okay. My point being, I don't want to get lost in the woods on that. Okay. Or lost in the weeds. Is that how you say? Well, whatever. I don't want to get lost in that. My point being is that in some ways things are kind of already a paradox. The future can affect the past can affect the future, the present, and everything's really just the present. There is no real tomorrow necessarily. That's such a huge subject. Okay. But time is a mesh, and everything that happens at any point in time really does kind of affect all other things. Okay, so no, I don't think you'd end up necessarily like in the paradox in the way that I think the questioner is kind of laying it out, because the paradox is sort of already here. But this is getting into a gigantic subject. I'd have to do an entire episode on time to talk about it. In fact, ironically, no, never mind. I'm not going there. We're moving on. I've got a ton of other questions I want to get to. So, okay. Yeah. So let's move on. So we got that. We talked about lethal force. If you haven't heard me talk about lethal force before, I do make what I think is a logical case against its use. I can get into that if you want. You're going to have to ask me about that though. But I will, that question about, would I break the prime directive in my personal life? I'm going to get to that in the future. I hope I answered the whole, if I could travel back in time and prevent this thing or that from happening. I hope I broke that down. Okay. So, all right, let's get on to another question here. It's 45 minutes. We still got some time. Some questions about property. No, not going to do those right now. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Here. All right. I promised you an album of the week. So let's do an album of the week. And this is a fun one. And this is one where the title, at least for me, is kind of unfortunate, but the attitude is just so right on. In fact, one of the songs in the album, so this is your album of the week. One of the songs from the album, like I almost consider it like a personal mantra or theme song. I mean, like I listen anytime I need a pick me up, I listen to it. But the album is All American Nightmare. You can see what I mean by the unfortunate title. But by Hinder, the band Hinder, which boy, I could talk forever about Hinder because I used to hate them, and I mean hate. In fact, I'm sorry, that's really not a strong enough word. Like I couldn't fucking stand this group. They had their album come out in 2005. Okay. Now, All American Nightmare came out in 2010. Let me just say it's a track for track album. It has so many different attitudes. It's so laid back. Austin Winkler, the lead singer, or previous lead singer, this is before they brought on Marshall Dutton, which now I'm back to hating Hinder because their last album that came out in 2015, I was so jazzed for it. I was ready. When the Smoke Clears, it's called. And like the album is just so weak and so fucking tame. So in my opinion, Extreme Behavior sucks from 2005. Then 10 years later in 2015, when they came out When the Smoke Clears, that sucks ass as well. Both terrible albums. So Hinder became a big deal in 2005, kind of with this sort of post-grunge or butt rock movement, whatever they want to call it. And they had that song Lips of an Angel off of Extreme Behavior, kind of a ballad. Like I used to get, that got so much radio play. I used to get so fucking annoyed at hearing that song. It just drove me nuts. I couldn't handle it. I love the cover to the album. I'll give it that much. But really, I mean, I feel a little bit better about Extreme Behavior now just because, I like Austin Winkler's voice so much. But anyway, come 2008, after, so Extreme Behavior sucked. Come 2008, they come out with Take It to the Limit. Now, I would have just totally written off this album, wouldn't listen to anything. If I wasn't listening to an interview from a member of one of my favorite bands of all time, and the interview was with Mick Mars, who's, of course, lead guitarist for Motley Crue, easily one of the greatest bands in history. And, he was saying, oh yeah, I'm on this, I'm on the title track for this new Hinder album, Take It to the Limit. And I was like, really? Okay, well, Mick, if you're on it, I'll give it a listen. And I did. And the song Take It to the Limit was badass. Then there's the song Up All Night, not to be confused with Slaughter's great opus, Up All Night. But that song was great. I was like, oh, wow, these guys, they're hitting it. Like, this is that badass rock, with tons of attitude and sex dripping from it, that I really love. And then in 2010, they came out with All American Nightmare, and they just they just took it to the heights. Right from the opening track, Two Sides of Me. Then you get into the title track, All American Nightmare. Again, I hate the use of the word American because I don't think there's anything nice about that. But the just the attitude coming off of those songs and the music video, especially for All American Nightmare, so fucking hot, so good. This is awesome workout music. It's awesome fucking music, and I mean as in like while you're fucking. It's great for that. There's other tracks on there too. Striptease is a great song. Red Lights. What You Gonna Do, When the Whiskey Ain't Flowing No More. I mean, like, awesome song. My personal mantra off the album, the one that I mentioned earlier that I just, kind of consider a theme, is the song Waking Up the Devil. Just fucking intense. I mean, so intense. I love that song. I can listen to that song all day long, and I totally feel it, you know. Just fantastic. I mean, just a great, just a masterpiece of an album. Really track for track, you know, and they followed it up pretty nicely with Welcome to the Freak Show. Now, the thing is that, so just quick, and we're going to get into other questions after this, don't worry. So Welcome to the Freak Show came out in 2012, came out 2 years later. And this has great music on it. Ladies Come First. The title track itself, Welcome to the Freak Show, See You in Hell is a good one. And there's a song on there, We Just Want to Be Rich. I actually so most of the songs are really good. We Just Want to Be Rich. Like it's kind of it's a sarcastic song. And I hate the fact that it's sarcastic. You know, I get it. I understand the message that they're trying to say. You know, they're kind of making fun of like Jersey Shore and, you know, Snooki and all this shit, right? But, you know, like that was a little annoying to me. And it's really the only thing that holds it up, or that kind of holds it back from being as good as All American Nightmare, even though All American Nightmare, just the songwriting, you know, especially for a third album. I mean, it's just unmatched for them. It was so good. And then of course, like I said, after Welcome to the Freak Show is a great sequel album. But When the Smoke Clears, don't even bother. And Austin Winkler actually came out with his own EP. Not a fan. As much as a fan as I am of Austin Winkler's like style and his, you know, and his voice and everything, not a fan of his little solo work there. So I'm looking forward to the day when he gets back with the band and, you know, kind of rocks it out. But if you only know of Hinder from the Extreme Behavior days, and maybe like me, you hate the song Lips of an Angel so much, listen to All American Nightmare. It'll completely change your mind. I mean, like that is just from the opening notes of Two Sides of Me right into the second track, and it just keeps going on. I mean, that is just a ripping album. I mean, so good. So that's my album of the week for you. I mean, if that album came out in 2016, it would have taken album of the year for me for 2016. Easy. Any year you put it out, they would have taken it. Just because that attitude is so good, you know, so much hedonism, you know, and I mean, just all the things I enjoy in life, you know, lots of sex and a very sexy, album all the way around. Oh man. Hey, there's a song on there called Hey Ho. Just great stuff. Great rock and roll roots in that. It's not what you think either, but anyway, track for track album right there. So All American Nightmare by Hinder from 2010, definitely, album of the week, shall we say, for our Sovereign Tech Q&A here. Some people are already asking me, I'm actually getting emails in now as I'm recording. Am I going to talk about the NASA announcement this week? So what happened is NASA is claiming that they found in a specific solar system called TRAPPIST-1, that they found 7 Earth-sized planets, and 3 of those are actually within the Goldilocks zone, which is what's, you know, it's the planetary, shall we say, alignment, or trajectory that is required for liquid water, you know, which is generally considered the basis of life, to be able to, you know, be on it. Yeah, I will be talking about that this week on Sovereign Tech. It'll be episode, I guess it'll be episode 214 we got coming up. Anyway, so yeah, that's coming. Okay, now I want to get into something else though, a different question. So this question is also a response actually to the recent Patreon episode of What Was Observationism. And the question is, I'll just read the whole thing. I, for one, like you better as an anarchist. It's not the perfect word, but it's the best we have. Yep, I agree. So you have to listen to that episode to understand what's meant by that. But here's the second part. I know you've mentioned E prime several times. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. Okay, yeah, I don't recall to what depth I've talked about E prime. Maybe like during or at the time it might have been called Pick of the Week years ago for Sovereign Tech, before it was called The Climax. I might have talked about E prime, or maybe I talked about it some other section of the show. But yeah, so I can talk a little bit about E prime, because one of the things we talked about in that episode, in that recent Patreon episode of What Was Observationism, was I brought up a point that I like to bring up a lot, and that is that the English language just sucks. Okay. Like it's really so bad. So E prime is E stands for English. So it's English prime. And the idea is, it excludes all the forms of, of the verb to be, gets rid of, conjugations, contractions, all that. Okay. So this was devised in the 40s by Alfred Korzybski, who wrote Science and Sanity, which I just heard somebody else, and I thought, especially in, shall we say, liberty circles, or anarchy circles, I thought I was the only one that's read this. I knew one other guy that had in the past. He's a good friend. But like I found somebody else that actually said they read Science and Sanity by Korzybski. And I was like, you read Korzybski? Whoa, cause it was it's really only been a few years old to me as well. Even though I've heard of, I kind of heard of E Prime a bit, but anyway, so to put it simply, okay, sorry. So when you're talking about Korzybski, he created this entire, I don't want to say ideology, that does it a disservice, but he has this entire concept, this intellectual framework called general semantics. Okay. And E Prime is a product / maybe more accurately a byproduct of general semantics. Now, if you want to learn a lot about general semantics and E Prime itself, generalsemantics.org. That's the website you want to go to. It is the homepage for the Institute of General Semantics. And I'll tell you, there's like 3 books. There's 3 main books on E Prime that are out there, and you will pay a killing for them on Amazon. Don't do it. If you buy it from the Institute for General Semantics, they offer them at like a normal fucking price, thankfully. So, anyway, the idea is, is getting rid of to be. The idea with general semantics in general, and it is near impossible to boil down general semantics into something that takes 2 minutes to say, or even a minute or whatever. Okay. Because this is just, it's a huge intellectual framework, really, really on its own. The idea is that, existence is a thing. Like there is maybe people would argue with me about this, but he's not denying that there's an objective reality, but he's saying that almost all perception is subjective. Okay. And so you're getting rid of the word is, okay. So here's an example. Okay. Here's a great example, say from like Hamlet. Okay. Here's a Shakespearean example. To be or not to be, that is the question, right? So if you were to say that in E Prime, you would say, to live or to die, I ask myself this. Now, I don't know if you notice a subtle difference here. Okay. Because with to be or not to be, there is like this certainty of what you're talking about. Okay. Now this isn't like getting into sort of a Pontius Pilate situation where what is truth? There is truth. Okay. Korzybski isn't saying there isn't truth, but the idea is that, like, what is your definition of life? I mean, like, consider if you were describing somebody to the tank, like that you saw a tank driving down the road, right? Like a military tank of some kind of, an M1 Abrams or something. You would say the tank is big, but, to somebody that's 5 foot, the tank is, perceptively larger than to somebody who is like, say, my height, like 6'1", right? So that saying it's big, I mean, that's a matter of degrees. Okay. And there's a whole, like, really like a psychological framework that comes with that, to when you start to describe things with how you perceive them. E Prime's kind of related to nonviolent communication in a way, in that it's more about talking about, your own feelings, your own perception, your own needs and things like this. Even though E Prime concentrates a lot more on, on your perception, but it makes it clear that you are perceiving that this is how you perceive things. And that's why you get rid of, like, again, the conjugate, to be, or the word is. Now, you might think that all that sounds very strange, and maybe I'm doing a terrible job of describing it to you. Okay. But again, the primary thing that you're doing is getting rid of the word is, in your language. I mean, like that's how it usually shapes up just as far as English goes. But understand, like Hebrew, modern Hebrew does not have to be, does not have conjugates. There's many languages that don't have that, to where, when you're describing something within the description itself, it's very clear that you're describing it, through your perception and you're not stating it as fact. And I'm a fan of E prime. And actually, in a lot of ways, personally, I think if not, I don't want to say the world, but I should say, if certain areas talked in E prime, and you might say that, well, with Hebrew, this would not seem to not be the case. But I wonder how fewer conflicts there would be. Because, you're not like the argument of, you said it was this, because even was, it's a form of is, you said it was this or whatever. And like those arguments would fall away because you're making it very clear that that's how, with E prime, how you perceived it. Now, if you want, the best way to really describe E prime is there's a couple of great novels. They're sequels to, or, one's a sequel to the other, by David Gerald. There's Under the Eye of God and then Covenant of Justice, which, they're related, shall I say. There's the works of Albert Ellis. There are actual works out there that are done in E prime. I, at one point, considered, doing the entire show Sovereign Tech in E prime, but I've never been 100%, really comfortable in speaking in E prime, shall we say, or writing, in it. It's a challenge. It's tough, to get rid of the word is, especially for me, because, I'm kind of an old school, lowercase o objectivist. And, what's kind of one of the objectivist credos effectively is A. How do you say that? You can't say is, but how do you say that? Well, no, there's an objective reality and A is A, existence exists, right? Now you can say existence exists. Like there's no real necessary issue about that. Well, even that could be kind of an issue, but like I thought about this and you'd have to say A equals A. Like that's the way you'd have to describe that you're describing, that you're describing objectivity. Even though general semantics is all about subjectivity, I guarantee I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but I'm very excited. I think E prime is a great and wonderful thing. It's in my list of, it's like the Holocene calendar, using the metric system, base 12 math, 24-hour days, which I've been doing forever anyway, since I was in the military. And even before that, because my dad, well, anyway, like it's just one of those other things that you can tack on, where it's this, alternative lifestyle. But yeah, I think E prime, like I said, I think there's a lot, the arguments around it of why it needs to be a thing is to be, I think are sound and valid. I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. I have a fairly large library on general semantics as well as E prime. And yeah, at some point, maybe I'll, deep dive and say, all right, no, I'm going to talk in E prime now. I've tried, and it just, especially like in social media, like it's very, very difficult, to kind of, especially like with tweeting, it becomes a real challenge. So there you go. And the advantages is again, in my opinion, would be that, see, look, I'm already doing it. How do you get away without saying would be? Would be, just let's own it. That I think you'd get rid of a lot of arguments. You'd get rid of a lot of misunderstandings when you do that. But again, E prime is just, it's a byproduct of general semantics as a theory as a whole. And I just don't have the time to talk about general semantics, with any real breadth, right now anyway. But if you've never read Science and Sanity, definitely read that. And then I think you'd grasp why E prime, is so exciting, or, why it needs to be what it is. Anyway. Okay. So hopefully I touched on that a bit. That's what E prime is. Again, I'm a big fan in talking in that style, and certainly it's impressive to read novels, especially science fiction novels done in E prime. You don't even realize it, but it's amazing how well it rolls off the tongue. And again, a lot of languages, not English, but a lot of languages already kind of are E prime, like Hebrew and some others. So anyway, let's get on to another question here. We'll see. We got the E prime one. Okay. All right. I'll try and do two. I want to try and get two more knocked out, and these shouldn't take long. So on the what is or what was observationism episode, I talked about the omega symbol, that being the symbol for sovereign tech, and that it was going to be the symbol for observationism. Oh, what was I thinking? But anyway, I do use the omega symbol for sovereign tech. I said I would talk about what the importance of, or what the use of the omega symbol is for. And I didn't. Like, I ended it because I didn't want it to go long, and I ended it and I never got to that. So I'll get to it very quickly here. There's a few different reasons for using the omega symbol. One is that it's a symbol of dark side. No, I don't want to admit to that one. So the omega symbol works for a bunch of different reasons. First off, it's I'm a very anti-war person, as seemingly more veterans are becoming, like myself, thankfully. I've been anti-war since I left, but so this, in the 70s, the omega symbol was used by the anti-war movement. Okay. And because why? Because in electrical engineering, the omega symbol is the symbol for what? Resistance. So it's perfect. And I've been using it for years on sovereign tech and really that is the primary reason that I use it, was because it's the old symbol for resistance, and which sovereign tech is certainly a part of the resistance, be it a few years ago to now, absolutely. So yeah, so that was my reasoning for using the omega symbol. And just because, it's generally represented, kind of as the O, the Greek version of the O now, that it worked for observationism. But now it's just kind of it has a great tech. It's this perfect combination for sovereign tech, in my opinion, because it has tech, it has anti-war, it has peace as a part of it. And it just has, this overall like anti-authoritarian, kind of bit to it. But then, at the same time, there's so much more. And, I could get into, conversations about alpha and omega and blah, 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 but I'm not going to go there. So yeah, the omega symbol, my opinion, perfect. But, while we're talking about, I mentioned Darkseid, of course, that's the DC Comics character. Let's get into this last question here. And as I said, we will be doing more in our series on the top 8 comics this week will be released. So that'll be coming. But I'll just answer a quick question here that got asked about that. So just kind of as a preview is what we may get into more in the further entrance into the series of the top 8 comic books. And I was, basically, I'll just be quick here. Who is the best Joker? That's it. It was a much longer question, but the best Joker. Wow. So Joker is definitely one of my favorite comic book characters. For a lot of people, he's seen sort of as the ultimate villain, and I think it's earned. Even though the Joker has really gone through a few different, transformations over time. And in fact, some of them I like, some of them I don't. I like particularly the Heath Ledger Joker. Look, I get it. Dark Knight, great movie. I'm not taking anything away from that. I don't like that style of Joker. So I can tell you certainly what my least favorite is Heath Ledger's Joker, because I like it when Joker's this real class act, when he's this really classy guy. And historically, he's been portrayed and played or voiced or put in comics as a very classy guy. Nuts, it's psychotic, but, a very classy guy. Going all the way back to, of course, my favorite Batman, that being the Adam West Batman, the 66 Batman series. Cesar Romero, classy as fuck, just delivering it all. He's not my favorite Joker, though. As far as, on screen, I guess, and boy, it's tough. How do you not say Mark Hamill's, voice acting as the Joker? He was the best, he was so good, but Jack Nicholson as the Joker. God damn it. That is just one of the greatest movie villain portrayals ever. Nothing comes close. Nothing comes close to that. He had the class, he had the humor. Very kind of dark comedy, Bob Gunn. Gonna need a minute alone, boys. Brilliant. I am super, super impressed by Jack Nicholson's Joker. He delivered. In fact, a lot of people don't know, but, there was supposed to be, when there was that run of, Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher, or is that Jerry Bruckheimer? Shit. Anyway, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Batman Returns, all those. There was going to be a fifth one. Was it Batman Undefeated or Batman Undisputed? Anyway, I should look this shit up before I talk about it, I guess. But the fifth one was supposed to have flashbacks, and Jack Nicholson was going to reprise the role of the Joker in the fifth movie. Personally, I wouldn't have minded seeing it, and I'm pretty sure it's Joel Schumacher. Anyway, hold on. I got to look this up. Yeah, Jesus, it's Joel Schumacher. Okay, I was right. So anyway, that fifth Batman movie, personally, I would have liked to have seen it, especially if Jack Nicholson was gonna come back. But anyway, yeah, definitely my favorite Joker, Jack Nicholson, all the way. He did it all, and he brought that character to life. I mean, I think so many different, the Killing Joke and so many other different things. Not to say that they were outcrops of each other, but I mean, I don't know. There was a style of Joker at the time, late 80s, early 90s, that was really that I thought was perfection, because it was that combination of the prankster and kind of the psychopath that just delivered the goods. And still kind of comedic, but comedic in that really kind of messed up way. As to where Mark Hamill, when he did the Joker, and granted it was on a kid's cartoon, quote unquote kids cartoon, right, in Batman the Animated Series, he was, way more of slapstick, kind of comedy. Not to say I have a problem with slapstick comedy, and Joker does it well, but yeah, it wasn't really the same. So yeah, I got to give my favorite Joker, to Jack Nicholson. And then, this is going to sound kind of funny, but another Joker that actually did a hell of a job. And I'm not going to mention the guy's name because it's not his real name, but there were, just in the past couple of years, there were a couple of great, and I mean, I'm dead serious. They were great. These were really well done films. A couple of great, porn movies, Batman movies made. There was what was called, Bat FXXX. Okay. So Bat F XXX, a Dark Knight parody. The guy that played the Joker in that was awesome. And he also reprised the role. They made a movie, Catwoman XXX, and that's Catwoman with a K. He reprised his role in that, and he was dynamite in both of them. I mean, in every way that you want to lay it out. I mean, I thought he was fantastic. And those movies, I mean, if you're ever looking for a porn storyline, they've got you covered. They deliver. Granted, they have, the background, the history of Batman to kind of back it up. Even though they don't call all the characters Batman for obvious, copyright reasons, unfortunately. But these are, in my opinion, two of the greatest porns ever made. So the guy that plays the Joker in those, awesome. And he plays it in the Heath Ledger style, but he still kind of has the class, and he's not super crazy. He doesn't go overboard. I think, it sucked when Dark Knight Rises came, when Dark Knight came out, the comic book Joker, it's just terrible. The way that they tried to make an amalgamation of the history of the Joker and then put it together with what is seen as a very popular portrayal, Heath Ledger's portrayal. I just thought that was shit. They've kind of left that behind finally now. And they kind of have, and I'm glad, because, give me the classy guy back, anyway. So there you go. That's enough. We're over an hour here. We're an hour and 12. That's my favorite Joker. Goes to Jack Nicholson, easily. Maybe I've been asked that before, but I got asked again. So there you go. There you have it. I got other episodes coming out in the coming week, really, and this week as well. That hope you'll enjoy. So, and of course, got a Dynamite Sovereign Tech lined up for this week, and Sex and Science Hour. Like I said, it'll be there, and actually, I thought it was a great episode too. So, hope you look forward to all of that content. Again, I have no expectation that you consume it all, but thank you if you do. I'm honored to fill your ears, as it were. So there we go. Okay, whew. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.